Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. And while we've been on a break from our First Stage Fridays in the Lay of Lathian, as I've been chatting with folks on Fandom Friday, we have been continuing in our read-through of the story of Aldarion and Erendis this series, and we are nearing the end. So let's get going with Week 55's Second Age Saturday. We'll pick up where we left off at the end of Week 54 after Aldarion, now Tar Aldarion, decided to leave Numenor for Middle-earth, something no king had ever done before. We also heard about a remarkable example of Erendis' teaching on marriage, but we haven't gotten to it yet. Now, last week's reading was also the first in the further courses of the narrative section after the completed portion of the story, but there are still so many wonderful moments that Christopher Tolkien has brought to light, so we're going to be reading through these as we conclude Series 7's Second Age Saturdays. And we're going to start with that example of Erendis' teaching on men and marriage. "Men in Numenor are half-elves," said Erendis, "especially the high men. They are neither the one nor the other. The long life that they were granted deceives them, and they dally in the world, children in mind, until age finds them. And then many only forsake play out of doors for play in their houses. They turn their play into great matters, and great matters into play. They would be craftsmen and lore masters and heroes all at once, and women to them are but fires on the hearth, for others to tend until they are tired of play in the evening. All things were made for their service. Hills are for quarries, rivers to furnish water or to turn wheels, trees for boards, women for their bodies' need, or, if fair, to adorn their table and hearth, and children to be teased when nothing else is to do, but they would as soon play with their hounds' whelps. To all they are gracious and kind, merry as larks in the morning if the sun shines, for they are never wrathful if they can avoid it. Men should be gay, they hold, generous as the rich, giving away what they do not need. Anger they show only when they become aware, suddenly, that there are other wills in the world beside their own. Then they will be as ruthless as the sea wind, if anything dare to withstand them. Thus it is, Ancalame, and we cannot alter it. For men fashioned Numenor, men, those heroes of old that they sing of their women we hear less, save that they wept when their men were slain. Numenor was to be a rest after war, but if they weary of rest and the plays of peace, soon they will go back to their great play, manslaying and war. Thus it is, and we are set here among them, but we need not assent. If we love Numenor also, let us enjoy it before they ruin it. We also are daughters of the great, and we have wills and courage of our own. Therefore do not bend, Ancalame. Once bend a little, and they will bend you further until you are bowed down. Sink your roots into the rock and face the wind, though it blow away all your leaves." Moreover, and more potently, Erendis had made Ancalame accustomed to the society of women, the cool, quiet, gentle life of Emerie, without interruptions or alarms. Boys, like Ebal, shouted. Men rode up blowing horns at strange hours and were fed with great noise. They begot children, and left them in the care of women when they were troublesome. And though childbirth had less of ills and peril, Numenor was not an earthly paradise, and the weariness of labor, or of all making, was not taken away. Ancalame, like her father, was resolute in pursuing her policies, and like him, she was obstinate, taking the opposite course to any that was counseled. She had something of her mother's coldness and sense of personal injury, and deep in her heart, almost but not quite forgotten, was the firmness with which Aldarion had unclasped her hand and set her down when he was in haste to be gone. She loved dearly the downlands of her home, and never, as she said in her life, could she sleep at peace far from the sound of sheep. But she did not refuse the heirship, and determined that when her day came, she would be a powerful ruling queen, and when so, to live where and how she pleased. It seems that for some 18 years after Aldarion became king, he was often gone from Numenor, and during that time Ancalame passed her days both in Emerie and in Armenelos, for Queen Almarion took a great liking to her, and indulged her as she had indulged Aldarion in his youth. In Armenelos she was treated with deference by all, and not least by Aldarion, And though at first she was ill at ease, missing the wide airs of her home, in time she ceased to be abashed, and became aware that men looked with wonder upon her beauty, now come to its full. As she grew older, she became ever more willful, and she found irksome the company of Erendis, who behaved like a widow and would not be queen. But she continued to return to Emerie, both as a retreat from Armenelos, and because she desired thus to vex Aldarion. She was clever and malicious, and saw promise of sport as the prize for which her mother and her father did battle. Wow. First off, I'm not really sure I'm qualified to comment much on Erendis' teaching about men and marriage, but I'm going to say it doesn't sound out of time or place even today for her to say that men turn their play into great matters and great matters into play, and that they only get angry when they become aware suddenly that there are other wills in the world beside their own. I freely confess, Tolkien didn't write about a large number of women characters, but he seems to be showing remarkable insight here into somebody who is deeply hurt. Now, while she might arguably have taken her advice maybe a bit too far, and Encalame takes it to heart as we'll soon see, she does at least encourage her daughter to find her own will and courage, to not bend, but to stand firm in the face of the wind. Soon, we see the young woman being described as obstinate, with something of her mother's coldness, and a deep, deep hurt at the moment her father had set her down when he was in a hurry to leave. That was one of those really blink-and-you-miss-it moments, but let's go back several weeks to that moment. Next morning, Aldarion hastened away. He lifted up Encalame and kissed her, but though she clung to him, he set her down quickly and rode off. Yeah, this does not endear him to my heart for sure, and to see that the way he treated his then 4-year-old daughter, no wonder she's the way she is now. And we're going to see more about that next time. Folks, that does it for this week's Second Age Saturday. Thank you for joining me. Be sure to come back next week as we read about the changes in Numenor's laws of succession, the restraints still upon Encalame, and the arrival of her first suitors. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus episode every week, and more. And please, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. Please follow or subscribe in your podcast apps and leave ratings and reviews. And follow @Tolkien Times on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.